Thank you. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Broome County Industrial Development Agency of June 21st, 2023. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our May 17th, 2023 board meetings.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second? Thank you, Dan. Two Dans. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We come to the part of our agenda where we have our public comment session. Anybody wishing to speak on any matter concerning the IDA, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Geez, I can't possibly do that.
I'll add a minute for you, John.
John Solak, groundbreaking Supreme Court decision on in-rem foreclosures. You can't, for lack of a better word, screw the property tax owner, the property owner. Groundbreaking. Now, a good attorney will comb through government records and look for the differential between what the foreclosure auction bought and where the property ended up, whether it ended up in the land bank or whatever. So the gig is up. The gig is absolutely up. And I see this, you see it in the city today. All of a sudden, a guy has a lot, the house is foreclosed. Why was the house foreclosed? Well, the guy couldn't afford the taxes. And then in a neighborly gesture, the city sells that property for $500 to the neighbor. It's sort of like being a farmer. You're waiting for other people to go under. Okay, you asked for this one on the website. You're making a statement about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I'm not big on that. But as I look before me, where's the diversity, equity, and inclusion? In fact, you got the mayor of Binghamton here. He's got a staff. So where is it? I mean, on one hand, it's ironic, isn't it, that Visions Credit Union has a diversity and equity and inclusion officer when the CEO is a person of color. So he could do both, I'm sure, if he wanted to. So that's that. You asked for that one. Now, do we need more land? We need more shovel-ready. Well, if you're Jason Garner, we do. Because Jason Garner, if you go and you take a list of your projects, the big ones, Paulus Development, all the big ones, what you see, Spark LLC, Newman Development, you see campaign contributions to Jason Garner. Five, Matthews, Newman, Paulus, over and over again. Now, and Mark Newman himself on the radio called Jason Garner the most valuable member of his team. So this is an agency where, well, let's look at it this way. Let's reverse engineer this. Let's look at a big project that has come to town, went through the county, went through this agency, and never made a campaign contribution. Jason Garner. Classic pay to play. And I quote the federal judge, I forgot his name. He served until about 89. I knew him from his writings on the Catholic Church. He was big on that when he was in the seminary. But he said, the judge said, if there's a difference between a bribe and a campaign contribution, I haven't found it yet. So that's some guy that was on the federal court for 30, 40, 50 years. I'll look his name up, give it back to you next week. So we don't need more shovel-ready sites. What you need to do is look at all the people that signed applications to this agency and swore that they would create these jobs that are not living up to the promise. Now, I'm just going through what has been said at these meetings, what I know. I can right now go through and find you 10 to 12 people that are nowhere near the promised employment figures. But this agency has no desire to go after and make sure that people comply. Now, what are those forms? Now, the question is this. You go and exaggerate on a mortgage application. If you're one of the unlucky ones, Bye-bye. So, are we gonna allow and embed this fraud to continue? You know, I'll tell you what, I'll volunteer. I'll get all the paperwork, give me a cubby hole here and put me in the front room and I'll get you all the people that are not compliant. Question is, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? So you got all these people swearing to this, swearing to that, plans. Okay, and I mentioned this last.
30 seconds, John.
Okay, the Binghamton University plan for Johnson City, nothing but hype, nothing but public relations. Look at it now, a blood bank, a weed shop, and they're gonna give up on his small batch pharmaceutical idea that Ozolid, and you need Jerry Willard to bail you out to make it look good. That's it.
Thank you, John. Would anybody else like to speak at this public comment session?
John, is the proper, I want to speak about the Apex project, but I was hoping more for a give and take since the agency invited legislators up to get questions answered. Is this the proper time or should I wait until?
We can do it when we come to that resolution. Give you a chance to ask questions. Absolutely.
I'd like to speak. My name is Bob Utter. I'm the PETA of the town of Maine. I'm here questioning some questions on the IDA project that they're proposing for Airport Road, town of Maine. Ms. Duncan and I have had a number of conversations, and she knows that I'm against it. Town of Maine is against it, but I have a couple of questions. One, can you give me a ballpark figure? Okay, it doesn't have to be exact, of approximately how much money has been spent so far on this 300-acre project. Stacy?
How many to answer?
Ballpark it. I mean,
You're welcome to hear.
Well, it's a public comment period, but I'm happy to answer your question. We've only spent around $100,000 on engineering reviews.
Well, that's not true. You told us back in January, you'd already spent, in April, you'd already spent 150,000 at the town of Maine meeting. So what happened to that 50?
We've
grand?
spent dollars on engineering reviews only.
I'm
I
asking
don't have the
total,
exact dollar,
money
somewhere
spent.
between $100,000 and $150,000.
You're giving me incorrect. Okay, good.
I would
Jesus Christ.
appreciate that this not become a debate, okay? It's a
Okay.
public comment session. It's your opportunity to tell us
Yes,
what you're
sir.
thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, both the town of Union, town of Maine are residential rural. They were originally agricultural. When they put the dome in, they did change the zoning to put the dome in. Most of these properties have been owned by one person for 70 years or more in the town of Maine. My question is, when you actually propose to send the paperwork to the towns, are you just going to ask for a zoning variance for the properties involved, or are you gonna ask for a zoning variance in the particular area, because it's just a small residential area to begin with? Are you gonna change the whole residential section of Maine, or just the properties involved? And if, have you submitted your seeker paperwork yet?
No, we have not submitted any applications. We're still in a due diligence and research phase. of
Well, I have
this.
a question for you. Why is all this money being spent, public money being spent? And no paperwork has gone to the town of Union, town of Maine, no paperwork has been filed with the state, whether it be the seeker program, 239 review, no paperwork. Town of Maine has not had any information whatsoever since the April meeting. I know the town of Union has, because I have comments from Bob Mack. I'm just curious why the town of Union is getting much more information than the town of Maine. And I'm gonna appeal to everyone here that's sitting here. You people are all part of this community. Especially you men, you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror to shave, hopefully. And this is not a good project for the people. This is your constituents, they're the people of this area, they're taxpayers. And you wanna destroy two neighborhoods, two towns by changing zoning. And it's against the town of Maine. We have a comprehensive plan that's very strong. We have a hometown rule plan that's very strong. And we have a zoning board that is very strong. I can tell you right now, you guys are wasting your money. Because it's gonna cost you a lot more money in the long run. The town of Maine is not gonna sign on to this project. Okay? And based on some of the information that's been put out publicly by Ms. Duncan and Mr. Gardner themselves, it's a great sales job. You're doing a great sales job, Stacy. I told you before, you're really good at your job, but this is not something for the city. My statement is you already have so many commercial properties available. You go 2 miles up the road, you have commercial zones that if you'd gone to that property, I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't have wasted the last 6 months of my time fighting this. They didn't even look at those properties. And bottom line, this is not shovel-ready property. All of you should know that property was condemned back in the 60s when it
30
was
seconds.
okay, because of the lead and arsenic in the soil. Health department's been notified. They're waiting for the secret program paperwork to be submitted. DEC in Syracuse is waiting for the paperwork and to be submitted. I'm just gonna tell you, you can continue with this project and spend the public money, but in the long run, it's gonna cost a lot more because I'm gonna be there trying to throw as many flies in the ointment as possible. I appreciate your time. Hope I don't come off this the wrong way, but I'm just a citizen that lived on my property for 70 years. This is wrong,
Thank you, Mr.
especially with the money.
Thank
The
you,
money
Mr. Gardner.
deals really well.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak at this public comment session? We'll call this session to a close. Executive Director's Report. Stacy, updates?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. A few updates I think they're still sitting on the printer, but I will provide to the board an end of session review that we received from our state association, the New York State Economic Development Council. One thing that I want to laud the efforts of our state association on a number of legislative items aimed at essentially restricting the powers of the IDA. A number of those did not go forward, and we're very appreciative of the efforts of our state association. One that did move forward, and I'd like to acknowledge, was one that we had strongly advocated for, which we worked closely with the New York State School Board Association, to name one, and a number of other associations, which was to allow school districts to include the calculation of pilot payments towards their tax cap growth factor. That had been a limiting rule for a number of years that both our state association and school boards association felt was limiting to the ability for school districts to appropriately calculate their tax levy on an annual basis. We worked through our association on this. I want to acknowledge Senator Webb, who signed on as a Senate sponsor for that bill, and as well the entirety of our Assembly delegation and Senate delegation that supported that bill. It was passed. We think that is a great move forward because we know that that pilot payment does provide benefit to the communities, and the school districts should be able to utilize that revenue in a more effective manner. So we were thrilled about that. I do have in your folders, we had some, as you know, several years ago, Bruce, Treasury maturity, we had allocated some funds to doing our phase 1 site inventory analysis. We had some remaining funds in that within that account. So we did utilize one of our preferred vendor services to provide us conceptual, these are conceptual only, conceptual site plans for 2 sites that we still currently own in the Broome Corporate Park. This is Broome Corporate Parkway 6 and 36. It's roughly about 10 acres. And as well Carlin Road, which is 129 and 159 Carlin Road. So you have just, I thought, a nice job, a very nice product that we worked with Labella and Associates on that. So we have shared these with a number of the commercial brokerage firms, site selection firms that we work with. Carlin Road is only about 15 acres. That makes up essentially the entirety of what we have left at the corporate park. So in total, in aggregate, we have about 25 acres, not congruent, but about 25 acres available at the corporate park. That's it. So we are working proactively to market and get this property information to area manufacturers, to outside sources as well. So I just wanted you to have a copy of those. On the communications front, I have in your folders, we did work with Central New York Business Journal to produce the revitalized Greater Binghamton publication. This was supported by a number of area businesses as well, as you see in the publication. We have a nice column from Mayor Cram. Thank you, Mayor, for your words in there. And we also highlighted a number of successful projects we've moved forward with, including Spark Broome, which is the Oakdale Commons, the UHS Wilson Hospital project, which we used our tax exempt bond financing for. And then the Business Journal solicited some additional articles in there. Again, on the communications, you also have in your folders a recent editorial that we produced in the New York Real Estate Journal, which is a Metro New York City area publication, but it's really statewide, on the impact that IDAs have in their communities, and not just in traditional metrics, but with community development such as housing and other important projects. A lot of the data that you have, and I can send this to you electronically. I did not print copies, but we can post this on our website as well. This is a recent update from the 2021 report that our state association did on the economic impact of New York State IDAs. This was a partnership with the New York State Economic Development Council and Camoin Associates. So I do have one hard copy here, but again, I'm happy to send that to the board electronically after today's discussion and anyone else who may want to review that document. I don't know if I will be happy to provide an update on where we are with the research on the new development park, but I don't know if there were any questions on anything thus far.
Any questions for Stacy? Thank you. Internal financial report. Have you had a chance, I trust, to review the budget comparison and where we stand with cash? Any questions?
I do have a note. We did, as I think I sent to you via email, we did terminate the benefit to Canopy Growth Corporation. After 3 years of that project, we did consult with them. We have terminated the benefit for that project. They have provided to all of the affected taxing jurisdictions payment for the previous years, which would be fiscal years 2021, 22, and 23. So those, 2020, 21, 22, and current day. So they have made all of the taxing jurisdictions whole. They have provided full payment to our fee, and that pilot is formally terminated.
Well done.
Thank you.
Any questions for Stacy on the financial documents? Just a quick one. Five South College Drive expenses. I was going to call you, but we missed each other. Why are we so over budget on that year to date?
Mostly due to continuing HVAC issues we're having with the building.
Good.
Yeah, we have a service contract, but unfortunately it provides so much, and we have run into a lot of challenges in that regard.
Just turn it down. Turn fancy. Just kidding.
We all have different internal temperatures, I've learned in this
Like I
building.
said,
So,
just
yeah,
kidding.
but it's been a challenge on that regard.
Thank you. Any other questions? Loan activity reports, questions for Natalie?
I will provide updates in executive session.
Got it. Thank you. Moving on to new business resolution. Here we go. Lots of words. Resolution accepting and authorizing a leaseback transaction to facilitate the acquisition, renovation, and equipping property located at 47 to 51 Pine Camp Drive in the town of Kirkwood, Broome County, New York, to be used as a warehouse wholesale facility for the storage of electrical materials and supplies, and appointing GMS Realty LLP, a Vermont limited liability partnership doing business in New York as GMS Realty Partners LLC, the company, agent of the agency, for the purpose of acquiring, renovating, and equipping the project, and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain documents with respect thereto, including a payment in lieu of tax agreement deviating from the agency's uniform tax exemption policy, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A, and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain documents with respect thereto. Stacy.
Okay, might have said it all, but I feel like you guys know this one by heart a little bit too, but this is a greater project description on this. Great Green Mountain Realty LLP is looking to purchase the site at 47 to 51 Pine Camp Drive in the town of Kirkwood, Broome County, New York. That is, for the record, that was the site that Canopy Growth Corporation did own. Its affiliated entity, Green Mountain Electrical Supply, is a wholesale supplier of electrical supplies and a third generation family owned business since 1953. GMES will use the facility for electrical materials and supplies for its wholesale business. This facility will help fulfill its 16 New York State branch locations and 2 New York distribution locations, including one that is recently opened on the city's east side. And they project to utilize the majority of the space, and they will own the entirety of the 48 acres at the site. They are conservatively projecting 20 hires at this location. That includes warehousing positions, driving positions, and some management positions. A full and complete application for benefits is in your packet, along with project review and cost benefit analysis. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. And we do also have Luke Choquette via Zoom. Luke is the president of Green Mountain Electrical Supply. And today's consideration is the approval of the benefit. We did have a public hearing on June 8th, and the transcript was provided to the board.
And this came through governance, correct?
Yes, it did. It comes forward as a motion.
Let us get the motion first. There's an order here. So that's the
Yeah.
motion.
It is a motion.
Is there a second? Thank you. Okay, any questions? You're on.
Yes, the public hearing, it just seemed like an odd time to have it. Why is that? Normally they're evening.
We try as much as possible to do evening, but for some reason, I think it was
I think we had trouble getting the
transcriptionist
space.
or the
Correct,
space.
yeah.
Typically, we work within the municipality.
There's no opposition anyhow. You just
No,
just
yeah, so we
change up.
typically, we try to find a time where if it's a daytime, at least it's at noon and someone.
We
can-
had the first hearing
Yeah.
in the evening and there was no one.
Yeah,
I couldn't see anybody objecting to the project. But
we did briefly chat with Supervisor Grubham in the town, and he does support the project, but he didn't stay for the full hearing, which was about 10 minutes long.
And they
The only time I
already
could
bought
pick
the
on a big guy
land.
like you.
They have. Yes, they have, yes.
Any additional questions or comments? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried. Item number 7. The resolution accepting an application from UB Family LLC, the company, for a leaseback transaction to facilitate the financing of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of 120 plus minus apartments situate within 5 floors located above a new 5-level municipal parking garage at 183 Water Street in the city of Binghamton, Broome County, New York, to provide for a sales and use tax exemption benefit in an amount not to exceed $1,152,280, to provide for a mortgage tax exemption in an amount not to exceed $242,200, to provide for real property tax exemption, a real property tax exemption deviating from the agency's uniform tax exemption policy in an amount not to exceed $11,595,622, and authorizing the agency to set and conduct a public hearing with respect thereto. Keep in mind, we're talking about accepting the application and nothing more than that. I'm gonna throw it to you, Stacy, and then maybe you would.
Yeah,
give
so
everybody a chance to-
absolutely. And as there are multiple parts to this project, my thought process is I will provide a short summary of the project. Then I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Cram to provide some additional detail on this. And then before we get into a conversation on the the actual structure of this pilot and the process involved with it, I thought I'd start there. So
Please.
with that, the Apex at Water Street Apartments project is proposed by the United Group of Companies through a new special purpose entity established to develop, own, and operate the apartments, UB Family LLC. That is who the applicant on the application is. United, which is based in Troy, New York, is a substantial real estate development and management company with 50 years of successful experience. The apartments are part of the overall Water Street Garage redevelopment, which is being undertaken by the city of Binghamton. So please note, the application for benefits pertains to the housing component of this project, as well as what is being called the podium, that is a requirement to be built with the garage to support the housing. We have no involvement in the actual construction of the garage itself. The apartments, the total project includes demolition of the existing Water Street garage while maintaining a portion of the Boscov's department store men's department and constructing a new public garage, which will be owned by the city's local benefit corporation. And I believe they have set up a specific entity to manage the garage. UB Family LLC will construct the apartments above the garage with site control established through a long-term air rights agreement with the garage owner. United has formed a joint venture with Pike Companies for the construction and development of the garage portion. And United Pike has entered into a development agreement with the city of Binghamton. Their garage will be developed as a standalone project, but in coordination with the apartment, as I noted. Just a few important bullet points on the project. The parking part of that is planned for 486 parking spaces that will be owned by the Binghamton, again, the entity that the city of Binghamton have formed to manage that. 120 new apartments. They are market rate apartments. However, the city has provided some support to identify or to establish 6 of those apartments as affordable units, which I believe will be at about 100% of area median income. As well as the air right payments, which will provide a little over $1 million in payment to the city over the life of the pilot. I will get into details and structure of the pilot, but at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Cram to offer some comments on the project.
Sure. Thank you, Stacy. And we have the development team at the IDA governance committee meeting to talk a little bit more in depth. But essentially faced with the challenge of the decaying Water Street parking garage downtown, garage has been there for decades. Several years ago, the city issued an RFP, and as a respondent, a joint venture between Pike Development and United Companies to do a mixed-use project, kind of the first of its kind in Broome County, where we'll be providing roughly 500 parking spots to support, growing downtown restaurant scene, Boscov's to support their continued growth and keeping them here in Binghamton. Also looking at what we could do to add to the deficit of market rate housing in Broome County, and generate new revenues so that parcel has never, over the last several decades, contributed anything from a taxing standpoint. And in talking to employers around Binghamton, oftentimes they tell us that in terms of acquiring talent, they can compete on salary, they can compete on work-life balance. They just can't compete when it comes to housing. Broome County does not have the type of housing that a lot of young professionals or even mid-career professionals want to have. This housing project will, join in about a $22 million investment by the city of Binghamton to fill that parking garage. Again, provide 120 new units that we feel are in great need in our community. It will be in the core of our downtown, near the entertainment, culture, and restaurant tavern scene that has become so important, and in the heart of what is becoming our walkable arts district downtown. So as Stacy mentioned, this pilot structure is a little bit different. We're taking advantage of an allowable a pilot bond structure, which will facilitate that, again, this first of its kind development. We're working very quickly to get shovels in the ground on the parking side of things. But clearly, the project doesn't happen for the housing without this abatement. And we're very excited about the project and what it means for the future of downtown.
Thank you, Mayor. So now getting into more of the details of the pilot request from the applicant. The term of the pilot is 28 years. It provides a 3-year ramp up or a freeze essentially, with a 25-year operational pilot. How this differs and why the process is different with this one. The pilot proposal seeks to essentially provide a proportional diversion, if you will, of the pilot payment to the affected taxing jurisdictions. As the mayor mentioned, this is something that IDAs have been a tool IDAs have been able to use since the authorizing legislation forming IDAs. We call it a PIF, a pilot increment finance tool. A PIF essentially works that a proportion of the pilot payment can be diverted away from the affected taxing jurisdictions for the purpose of paying down debt financing. In this case, it would be the pilot bond financing, which is in your pilot schedule. It's the $4.5 million that is proposed for a period of about 10 years to pay down the debt on the construction of the podium, which is a necessary infrastructure piece to build the housing. How our process changes with a PIF as compared to the normal process is because it does purport to divert that payment, it requires, prior to any IDA action, it requires all of the affected taxing jurisdictions by resolution to approve of this pilot structure. So the county, Broome County has to approve of this, the city of Binghamton as well, the city of Binghamton School District. Their meetings are all taking place or have taken place in the last several weeks, and I believe will conclude in mid-July. I did receive a number of questions from the City of Binghamton School District, and we plan to be at the July 18th City of Binghamton School District Board meeting to answer those questions related to process. So that is sort of how the pilot differs from what you're, I think, used to seeing. So again, today is just to accept the application and advance the public hearing date. However, one other note is when we overhauled our uniform tax exemption policy in March of 2022, we added a notation that any deviation from our standard pilot schedule would require a third party and independent financial analysis, which we work with National Development Council to do. So the board has received a copy of their financial analysis, and I do have Kevin Grems on the line. So Kevin is with National Development Council. For those that don't know, National Development Council is a nationwide a CDFI, a community development finance organization who provides a number of resources, project structuring, review, financial analysis, as you're about to hear. They also work with communities on new market tax credit programs and a variety of financing. So Kevin, if you could just provide a short overview of your analysis, we will continue. So.
Hello.
Thank you, Stacy, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having me this afternoon. As Stacy mentioned, NDC is a national nonprofit, and we work exclusively on behalf of municipalities and public benefit corporations. We work with a lot of IDAs throughout the state of New York, and our primary role with industrial development agencies is help to substantiate the need for financial assistance, and then also help right-size the financial assistance package. So as Stacy mentioned, we were involved a couple of years ago in the updating of the uniform tax exemption policy, and this proposed schedule is a deviation from that. Some of the key issues that we discussed a few years ago with the uniform tax exemption policy is keeping the term at a reasonable rate and reasonable term, and that's really based upon where the taxes come in on an as complete full tax basis, and in this case, as we'll see in a few minutes, the taxes on a per unit basis, the as complete full taxes, is just simply too high to render the development financially feasible. So there undoubtedly is a need for a pilot. The difference in this case is that the term is a little bit longer. There's a little bit longer runway to phase into full taxes. And then also, as Stacy mentioned, the pilot itself is not going directly to the, or at least it's proposed not to go directly to the taxing jurisdictions, because for the first 10 years, that pilot is being proposed to pay off the debt service on a bond for a portion of the parking garage that is necessary for the residential units to be built above it. So in terms of our role, this is a typical role for NDC, is to, on behalf of the IDAs, review the IDA application, development program, and the developer financial model, determine the need for the payment in lieu of taxes, and then offer comment and perspective on the sizing and the terms of the pilot to the staff and board. And that's what I'll summarize those comments and those findings in the next few minutes. So Stacy did a very thorough job in terms of reviewing the proposed development and its program, as did the mayor. So it's 120 residential units, and recently the city had worked with the developer to encourage a set aside for workforce housing. So there will be 6 units set aside for workforce housing, and I believe they're going to be priced at for individuals and families at below 100% of area median income. So there will be 114 market rate units. The parking is in five levels below the proposed residential. It's 486 spaces. And that would be for purposes of serving the customer base at Boscov's, nearby retail, as well as the residential product. As Stacy mentioned, we have a highly accomplished development team, specifically with United Group, who has 50 years of experience under his belt with many comparable residential and mixed-use developments throughout the Northeast. Now, the initial application came in some time ago, and as is the case with most development these days, it's been subject to fluctuations in cost. And unfortunately, in the last few years, most of those costs have gone up just in terms of building materials. So this budget has gone up considerably from the time in which the development was first introduced to the IDA. So now the development is at $37.6 million. That's equivalent to $310,000 per unit. So I would say, based upon our experience in reviewing other comparable residential developments, that's a reasonable budget. It had gone up quite considerably, but still at a $310,000 per space. It's still within reason and comparable to other newly constructed residential products in the marketplace. You have a fairly typical capital structure, whereby the conventional loan is sized at approximately 65% of project costs. The developer is also making use of a mezzanine credit facility, and is using both its own investment and an outside investment partner for the equity that's necessary to fill out the capital structure to cover the development costs. I would note that there is also so that's the overall capital structure. So as the mayor and Stacy had mentioned, this is all part of a larger development that includes a 486 space parking garage to replace the existing parking garage. But a key part of that parking garage, which is really essentially the foundation for the residential above the parking garage, is the podium. And the bond issue is being issued to cover that cost. And what the city is requesting is for the pilot be the source of the repayment to pay off the debt service on that bond issue. That's a necessary component for the residential product, but it's connected to the parking garage. So we have looked at the rent roll, and quite honestly, because of the high caliber of the proposed construction, these rents are considerable rents, slightly higher than what you see in the Binghamton marketplace. But it's a rent roll that's necessary to be able to cover the development costs for the proposed product. And as we mentioned before, there will be 6 units set aside for workforce units at 100% of area median income. Now, given the fact that this is an existing parking structure, this is a tax exempt property. So that there are no taxes being collected on the property right now. Now, based upon the proposed program and the 120 units, the as complete estimated full tax is $816,000. And honestly, initially when I first looked at that estimate, I was a little taken back because that's a high dollar amount for a residential product to absorb. It's equivalent to more than $6,800 per unit annually. And simply put, the residential units taxed at $6,800 annually would not be, or the project wouldn't be able to absorb that and be financially feasible from the initial year. So that in and itself underscores the fact that there's definitely a need for a pilot in order to create financial feasibility. Stacy had mentioned the terms of the pilot, and one of the things that we had discussed for the pilot itself in terms of the guidance that was incorporated into the updating of the uniform tax exemption policy is that the pilot paid during the term exceed the dollar amount of the savings provided to the project itself. And in this case, you're almost at a 50-50 split between the pilot being paid during the term and the savings realized by the project itself. The savings are slightly higher than the pilot that will be paid during the proposed term. But the fact is that the pilot itself is still a considerable increment above what is being paid. Now, again, you have this arrangement, this proposed arrangement where the pilot is being used as a source of repayment for the bond issue. But in terms of the pilot itself that is being paid by the project, this is appropriately sized to create financial feasibility, because with higher pilot payments, or certainly with pilot or real estate taxes at full value, the development is not financially feasible. So you'll see that the pilot in the first 10 years at $244,000, and that's based upon a 70% exemption on the improvements, is slightly higher than the debt service on the bond itself. So in the first 10 years, that pilot, the way it's sized, is about the same as what the debt service payment on the bond is. And there's modest payments that are left for distribution to the respective taxing jurisdictions. But it's after year 10. In year 10, there will be after year 10. That's when the taxing jurisdictions realize significant increment of the difference between the pilot and the debt service on the bond issue. So this next slide, what we look to demonstrate is if the development were to absorb taxes based upon the estimated full taxes, again, that's equivalent to $8,600 annually. The development is simply not financially feasible. In fact, with taxes at full assessment, full taxes at assessment, results in a cash flow loss. And certainly no developer is going to undertake a development that results in a $400,000 cash flow loss. So this just illustrates the fact that with full taxes in a stabilized year, the development is not financially feasible. Where the taxes, and again, this is the operations in the third year, what we call the stabilized year, the year in which it reaches its stabilization of approximately 95% occupancy. In the column under with pilot in the third year, you'll see the pilot in the third year is 244,000. That allows the project to be to have positive cash flow. Although I would note the fact that the debt coverage ratio is still very tight. In fact, it's 1.07, and the other metrics in which we look at in terms of measuring developer return is actually quite modest, and frankly a little bit lower than what is normally expected in the marketplace. So the pilot, as proposed, based upon the 70% abatement on improvements in the third year, allows the project to be financially feasible, but there's not an incidence of undue enrichment based upon these modest ratios in terms of debt coverage ratio and the returns to the investors. So overall, the pilot is necessary to create financial feasibility. The property is tax exempt based upon all the improvements at $116,000 or over $6,800. It is not financially feasible. We had shared the terms of the pilot. It's a little bit longer than your UTEP. It's 28 years instead of the 20 years, and you have those respective abatements in those years that you see on the screen. But of note, over the term of the pilot, the average annual pilot is $402,000, or equivalent to $3,700 per unit annually. $3,700 per unit annually is still a very respectable dollar amount to be getting from residential rental units. And then the other thing that the developer and the city has also arranged for an air rights payment for the right to develop over the parking garage, and that is almost $1 million of additional payments during the pilot term. So is there a but-for test? Yes. But for the availability of the pilot, the development is not financially feasible. Does it provide undue enrichment? No. So what I'd like to do is to summarize in terms of, we look to summarize both the public benefits and the project benefits. The public benefit is the pilot that's paid over the term. So there's $11.2 million of pilot paid over the term. There's also $1 million of air right payments paid to the city. And then we also look at the value of affordable housing, the discount of those units being made available for members of the workforce in Binghamton. And the differential in values is a little bit less than $1 million. So that discount to those residents that are chosen for the workforce housing certainly has real value. And there's additional city fees and IDA fees that are incorporated. So that totals a little over $14 million. The savings to the project in terms of tax savings is at $11.5 million. And then Stacy had also mentioned the dollar amount of the sales tax exemption and the mortgage recording tax exemption. But those public benefits at $14 million exceeds the savings to the project itself. And I would note, other than the financial benefit, this kind of development is a game changer. It recreates the marketplace for encouraging investment into the downtown, providing 120 units of both market rate housing and affordable, because both not only is the affordable housing necessary, but the market rate housing is very important part of bringing in the employment base of from your employers in Binghamton, and then it adds a considerable amount of disposable income to certainly help the retail trade in the downtown marketplace. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kevin. Very well done. Any questions for Kevin? Mike?
Is there any possibility that this project could move forward with a pilot that, say, was 20 years or 15 years, or amortized over 28 years with some kind of balloon payment?
We looked at the shorter schedules. The fact is that the pilot or the estimated full tax is at 6,800. That was a number that was higher than I was expecting to see when I first reviewed this. And when you have such a high number of estimated full tax, you typically need a little bit longer runway to phase into full taxes. You know, as I mentioned, even with the 70% abatement that's locked in for 10 years, the returns in terms of debt coverage ratio and the returns to the investors is still quite modest. So could it still be financially feasible with a slightly lower term? Maybe, but what I'm saying is that overall, even with the 28-year term, the returns are quite modest, and it's certainly not providing more than what is more than an undue enrichment to the development team that's putting this together. There's a reason why not more of these developments, especially new construction, is not done. What we've withstood in the last few years is several increases to the interest rate and the increases that I mentioned to the development budget. So 2 years ago, when I first looked at this, almost 2 years ago when I first looked at it, the development costs were more than $8 million or $8 million less than they are today. And the interest rates were probably at 250 to 300 basis points. So my response to you a few years ago would be maybe. Now in this current marketplace, it's a lot more challenging to make this work with a shorter term.
Thank you, Kevin. Mike, follow up, by the way.
Yes, hi. I believe the developer is a little bit away yet from locking in their financial commitments, and chances are pretty good that interest rates are going to go up again before that happens. Is that factored into your analysis at all, higher interest rates?
Yeah, when I first looked at this, we were at you know, the permanent loan rate, I think we were anticipating or putting into our model was 5%. And now, you know, who knows what to put it in. I think we modeled this at 6.5%, although that interest rate could certainly be higher at the time of closing. So yes, we did factor in the higher interest rate and the risk that it represents.
Any other questions from the board? Legislator Whalen is here, and I will look forward to an opportunity to ask or talk.
Thank you, John. With the two major cost centers, that being tax payments, property tax payments, and your costs with respect to the mortgage money that they're putting up there, those are fixed and out through the 28-year period of the project. However, the cost for the rents are clearly not fixed, as anyone knows. rents will go up. I have a niece down in Hoboken that pays $400 more each year for her apartment. So your analysis was based on the figures they provided in year 3, I believe.
That's correct.
And things were kind of tight in year 3, but going out over the life, certainly in the teen years and the 20 years, you're getting a much more viable cash flow and profitability for the developers, correct?
Yeah, and we model it, and we model it out over the term of the pilot. So we modeled it based upon 3% escalators for the income. And and quite frankly, the developer, after initial discussion on this project more than a year ago, really evaluated the market and was a little bit more bullish in terms of these market rate rents. So if you look at this rent roll, it's certainly not an instance, and I see this all the time with other projects where they understate the market in terms of where the rental market is, just so that their numbers are not as strong. But the developer, I think, really looked at the market, and this is the upper end of the marketplace, and they're pushing the envelope a little bit, frankly, in terms of these rents and what you see for comparable buildings in Binghamton. And frankly, there's not a whole lot of comparable buildings of newly constructed high-end rental buildings. And there's a reason for that, because it's difficult to cover new construction costs with the realities of the marketplace with a limited income stream that you could generate. So if you look at some of these rents, they're 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom at $31.55. That's not understated in the marketplace. That's I think most of you would agree that that's pushing the marketplace in terms of where existing rental rates are for residential rental units. And even with that, you still have modest returns.
I know this is considered as market rate rentals, but there's no provision that should the developer find, say, student housing more profitable, that they wouldn't shift over to that. And I think, I don't know if this board has a policy on student.
That would be considered a substantive change to the project. It would have to come back to us. They wouldn't be able to just do that as a right. It would, yeah.
Well, once it's built, they could do that.
No, they would have any change to the targeted market for the housing would have to come back for approval by the board.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
And any transfer as well, just a transfer of ownership as well.
We have some stipulation in there about a transfer of ownership in the first X number of years.
It's in our, we built that into our new UTEP. That you can't just, it's not an as of right, you have to.
With that in mind, and assuming there's no other questions I'm sorry, Dan? I'm very sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know who to direct it to, or I think I understand it correctly. But the additional structure and the podium that's needed, what is the vehicle that's being used to pay the municipality for that additional structure?
So the podium,
Right, because
Yeah.
in order to support those apartments.
that's the
you're gonna-
pilot bond, that
That's
will
the
be,
PIF?
that's the
PIF
pilot
payment
bond,
piece,
yeah. That will be used, I think in first 2 years, the city will make that payment and then the developer will essentially reimburse.
So that'll make you whole.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah, it's for infrastructure as needed.
Yeah.
Read between the lines correctly, but.
you got it, you got it.
Mayor, is the parking ramp waiting for the approval of the apartments?
Not necessarily. We're moving forward on the parking ramp. We want this to be a combined project. Obviously, when it gets later on in the construction of the parking garage, certainly there's some coordination that's going to be needed. But we understand the timeline that's needed on the IDA. So we view this as a one project, even though there may be 2 separate contracts for it.
Any additional questions? Looking for a motion from governance.
This comes forward as a motion from governance.
Excellent. Is there a second? Mike? Okay. Any other or further discussions?
This is for the,
We are
Acceptance.
accepting the application and we're carving the way for a public hearing on the matter. That's all we're doing. Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Kevin and Mayor and Mark. Appreciate it. Moving on to item number 8, resolution approving an extension of the February 5th, 2021 sales and use tax exemption agreement with Bluestone Wind LLC through and including December 29th, 2023, the total of which shall not exceed $8,807,628.
So yes, this is a request for the extension of the time. There's no increase in cost. It's just a request for a 6 months extension for time allowed for the sales tax exemption for the construction of the Bluestone Wind project. As you see, you have a letter from Bluestone Wind in your packet. The wind project is essentially complete and they are awaiting final energization of the project in connection to the grid. They expect to bring the full project into commercial operations as early as Q3 of this year. However, like many of our projects, the process has taken longer than expected this spring, and several important site restorations remain outstanding. This includes removal of road turning, radii. I don't know, a lot of this means 2 laydown yards that were built to accommodate turbine delivery, the restoration of vegetation along access roads, additional municipal road repair, and a number of punch list items. So they are seeking a 6 months request through the end of June. Through the end of this year. Yes, through December 31. It is set to expire at the end of June. So they're looking for another 6 months.
Question for Stacy. Did this go through governance?
No, it
did
it came after. It came like a day later.
Okay.
So
Is there a motion? Thank you, Dan. Is there a second? Thank you, Elaine. Any discussion on this?
this was all approved back before 21, right?
yes,
Way
this,
back.
yeah, this
Way
was,
back.
yeah. So this was the original. So when they receive a sales tax exemption, actually not every IDA puts a time frame on theirs. We do. We put typically about a year to 2 years for construction. Oftentimes, especially with COVID, you find cost delays, time delays, supply chain delays, project delays. So we often get requests for extensions of that time.
But they knew this was going on last year. When they finished the assembly of these, they never made the attempt to.
They did. We had.
They knew
we
that
had
deadline was
approved.
there. They never made
Yes,
the
we
attempt
did
to-
do a 6 months extension. This is an extension of an extension. We had encouraged them to do a full year, which is what we typically encourage our applicants, but they had requested 6 months. So this would actually give them the year we actually recommended that they pursue. But that makes sense.
Again, this was several years ago, but the benefit for Broome County. Anywhere in here?
I mean, it's the economic benefit. I'd have to pull out our.
I know it went way
Yes.
back.
A lot of painful discussion on this one. You may recall, Joe definitely recalls. Any further questions? Is there a motion? Thank you, Dan. Is there a second? Oh, we already did that. Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One.
Thank you, Dan. Any abstentions? Carried.
Okay.
Looking for a motion to go into executive session to talk about.
I have an executive session item related to the status of some loans with the
Thank you,
IDA.
Mayor.
Thank you. Take care.
So.
Is there a motion?
from this-
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second? Thanks, Jim.